Hello, I'm Jim Littles. I'm the Academic Director for Purpose Institute. What a delight it is to make this video for you today on field experience. Now, I know already, having been a part of apostolic higher education for over 30 years now, when I say things like field experience, there's a little bit of anxiety. There's a, oh no, begins to well up inside of students as they see the opportunity that's in front of them, see it as a challenge instead of an opportunity. I want you to know right now, the thing which has called you to PI, that is the Holy Spirit, that which has called you to PI is equipping you for your service in the field. God has called you to the field. Now He's called your pastor. He's called those in leadership in your local congregation to do some amazing things, as we see in Ephesians 4, for the equipping of saints for the work of ministry. But God has also gifted each and every one of you uniquely for His purposes and His design, and your congregation has chosen PI as a tool to assist in the process. Human beings, psychologists tell us, beyond basic survival needs, have a need for purpose. And once their survival needs are met, they have a roof over their head and a little food in their belly, and there aren't any wolves ready to chow down on them. Perhaps the next greatest need is a need for purpose. And as we read the New Testament, we find out that for men and women of faith, purpose even eclipses the need for survival. Paul gives a litany of challenges that he experienced as a person on mission, being shipwrecked, being beaten. But all of these things, and even his own heritage, which is amazing, the heritage that he had, he says, I count all of these things but waste. He lived his life on mission. And by the way, I want you to remember that Paul was bivocational his whole life. He was never, quote unquote, in full-time ministry in the sense of only engaging in congregational ministry and never working in the marketplace. Instead, as an entrepreneur, a tent maker, he used his labor, his work, making tents, making sails, or doing leather work. As he would go into a community, it automatically connected him to the marketplace, connected him to artisans who were in similar fields of work, and connected him to suppliers. Maybe this is why he met Lydia by the sea as he was in Philippi, because she was in the supply chain as a seller of purple. She was in the dyeing part of the industry of which Paul was a part. Paul did not see his work as distracting from his ministry. Instead, to put him in the context of others, Priscilla and Aquila, and perhaps even Apollos, who were fellow tent makers. God has a purpose and a design for you. Your goal isn't to be, quote unquote, full-time ministry, that is to never have to work for a paycheck. Instead, your goal is to go powerfully into the harvest field. You live on purpose. Tabitha, I doubt she ever recognized the way her life, one stitch at a time, was doing the kingdom's work. Her ministry was literally just one stitch at a time. Compared to Paul, it seems like she was doing little, but for her city, she had a tremendous impact. And at her passing, they would bring the garments to her and say, look what Tabitha did for us. We can't live without her. One stitch at a time, she was building the kingdom. I don't know how God has equipped you and designed you for this season. You might be 18 years old and you might be 70 years old. I have students like that in my local campus in Garland. Across the age, across experience perspective, God is equipping you for this time. You've been gifted by the Holy Spirit. You've been given spiritual gifts for this period of time. PI wants to help you clarify your spiritual gifts that are there, help you to mature in those gifts and to use those gifts even more intentionally than you have in the past. When I was growing up, it seemed to be that we thought of spiritual gifts, of things that only happen in the building and perhaps in the hands of an elite few. But as you study the biblical text through your PI tenure, you will see that everyone is equipped by the Holy Spirit to do a work, a purpose of God in this hour. So PI, through field experience, wants to help you discover those gifts, develop those gifts, and use those under the direction of leaders that God has placed in your life. As a gifted man or woman of faith, you are gifted in the context of the whole body. You are not saving your community. You are not turning your community upside down. The body is doing the work that God is sending you, meaning the whole body of believers in the world, to do. As such, the gift that you have are uniquely fused together with the gifts of the person in the seat next to you in PI and the one next to you in worship in the Sunday morning worship service. PI wants to provide an opportunity for discernment and a proving ground for those gifts. All of those gifts are for the field. They are not trophies of honor. We do not want people to look at us and see us as prayer warriors or having the gift of tongues or interpretation of tongues or the gift of administration. We do not want to be seen as gifted givers or gifted edifiers. Instead, when people see the work that's done, we want God to receive the glory. We are not trophies for the kingdom. We are laborers in the field, and God alone gets the glory. So for the field, providing opportunity for you to put those gifts into use. There are going to be three primary areas that you're going to serve. One is the local church. And as you can see in the Field Experience Handbook, this can be in children's ministry, youth ministry. It might be leading of worship, it might be teaching or first impressions. Any of those kind of in-house ministries, you need at least 2 credits of that at the foundational level and 2 credits at the advanced level. Disciple making, this is your personal efforts to lead people closer to Christ. It might be pre-discipleship, that is evangelism kinds of things, where you're reaching out, talking to neighbors or engaging in local community efforts as a way to evangelize. It might be teaching home Bible studies or mentoring new converts. Or it might be a local campus ministry coffee shop at the local university where you might at 2 o'clock in the morning be serving as a barista for students consuming pizza and asking questions about ways in which they are to transition from being university students into being ambassadors for Christ. So that disciple-making work of a campus ministry, so vital. You might be engaged in missional efforts. This might be community service or a nursing home or ministry to those who are in need. Or you might take a trip overseas and serve perhaps in an area struck by a storm to help rebuild homes or train Sunday school teachers overseas, some missionary pieces. Each of these you'll have 2 credits in each: local church, disciple making, and missional engagement. I'd like to give a brief overview of the process that you will be following. You can find these steps in the Field Experience Handbook. You'll talk with your Field Experience Director. Every campus will have one. And they will help you recognize where you are and where God is leading you, and talk about some of the placement opportunities. You'll complete a placement covenant form. There's a separate video on the covenant form. The covenant form helps you to define what you're going to do, when you're going to do it, where you're going to do it, and what your primary learning goals are going to be. You're going to serve 5 hours minimum for each credit. You can serve far more than that, obviously, but 5 hours for credit. You cannot apply retroactively for things you've done in the past. It's things God's having you do right now. You're going to reflect on that on the reflection form, which will be discussed in a separate video. You'll attend a post-field experience meeting with your supervisor. So if it's in the children's ministry or under the direction of the outreach minister of your local church, you'll meet with that supervisor after you've done your service and hear feedback from them, from their evaluation of what you've done. Receive that as guidance and direction. Don't receive that as criticism. Receive that as areas where you can grow and mature. You're going to give all those forms to the field experience director and even schedule a meeting with them. Now, those meetings don't have to be formal, lengthy. If you attend the same church as the field experience director, you can meet with them simply after church or meet for coffee. Might be during a break during a PI class. You'll put those requests for your credit on the website and then check to make sure that the field experience director has checked off on that. In conclusion, I'd like to say that if you are already a pastor, you're a PI student who is a pastor, you'll have some differences as it's spelled out in the handbook. Your mentor will be either an elder in your life someplace, that you continue to have a relationship with them, get feedback from them, things that you're doing as a pastor. It could be some peers. You might have a peer group, a covenant peer group where you and 2 or 3 or 4 other pastor leaders meet together on a regular basis, regular meaning monthly or a couple of times a month, to talk about things that you're developing and maturing in ministry. Obviously, you're doing more than 10 hours of ministry per semester. Identify one area that you want to focus specifically on each semester. Use that as your field experience project so that you can grow and mature in that way. Students, I am so honored that you're a part of PI in this season. God is doing amazing things. God is using some of you to take the gospel in a dimension we had never seen before. I've heard recently of a PI student in Montreal who has been engaged in during this COVID lockdown season, teaching some Bible studies through the website. And now, as soon as they have the opportunity, they're going to be baptizing some folks as a result of their field experience done through Zoom kinds of teaching. God's doing amazing things. Be available to the work of the Spirit. Let people mentor you and guide you in the process. And finally, anticipate the white harvest field where God is sending you for this day. Let the Lord do a work through you.